I'm Michael Osborne. My friends call me Oz. I'm an independent candidate for the House of Delegates here in the 5th District of Virginia. Just as our founding fathers found it necessary to explain their reasons for breaking ties with Great Britain, I find it necessary to explain my reasons for breaking my ties with the Republican Party. Yes, I'm running as an independent candidate against the Republican Party candidate. And the explanation is as follows. As most of you know, I was the Republican Party candidate for Congress in 2000. I started out as an independent candidate. I traveled to many of the 22 counties and 4 cities that were included in the 9th District at that time, and began to speak at the mass meetings or at the party meetings of each of those counties. The party came to me, Republican Party, and offered to take me in as their candidate, which I considered. And at one point, Morgan Griffith came to me, who was in the House of Delegates at that time, and asked me not to run for Congress. Well, I thought that a little odd, but I contemplated the reasons behind it and understood that there were some political reasons for not wanting to have any opponent against Rick Boucher. But I declined to resign and continued to speak at the mass meetings throughout the 9th District. We got to the 9th District Convention, which was held at Abingdon Higher Ed Center, and there were forces in play even at that time that were seeking to shut down our convention, 9th District Convention, before anyone had the opportunity to nominate me as the candidate. Well, as it turned out, I was nominated and was proud to represent the Fighting 9th District as an independent-minded Republican candidate. I traveled extensively throughout the 9th District and had just a fantastic time getting to meet many of the people, attending many of the parades and the festivals, and had many cookouts, hot dog suppers, and the people on the local level were extremely encouraging. And I know that the $10 and $20 that were given and donated to our campaign were a sacrifice for many of those people. However, I do realize that for a congressional candidate to raise $35,000, and that was our budget that year in 2000, for a congressional race, as opposed to $750,000 that my opponent spent during that race, that something was not quite right with the backing and support of the powers that be in the Republican Party. There were no established candidates in Southwest Virginia that came out in support of our campaign. None of them made a contribution to our campaign. And when it came to making the signs in the 9th District, there was Bush and Allen and no Osborne on those signs. Just a small thing, but it gives you some sort of an idea as to the network that is involved in the Republican Party, or any party for that matter, of some people call it a good old boys network, some people call it the establishment, the political powers that be, but they were definitely at work in the year 2000. I thoroughly enjoyed, as I said, my run for Congress, and continued to work in the Republican Party. I've had been the Wilson District Chairman in Washington County for many years, worked the polls, put up the signs, supported all the candidates. Up until last year, 2010, I was still the Wilson District Chairman. I was on the executive committee of the Republican Party in Washington County, and that was the year that Morgan Griffith ran for Congress and was successful. I went to his celebration party there at Bristol. At the Holiday Inn is where it was, and of course it was a great time for them of celebrating, and they invited many of the previous politicians up onto the stage, many of the current politicians, and even Adam Light, who was an opponent of Mr. Griffith during that year's election. And I was there, standing right near the stage, and there was not an offer or an acknowledgement of the fact that a previous congressional candidate was even present in the room. Just a small thing, I know, but things do begin to add up. Now, this is where the real story comes in, and why I am running as an independent, and this is my declaration of independence. Last year, I went to speak to Joe Johnson, who is or was the current House of Delegate member. He's a Democrat, but very well liked, and I think for 22 years has done a superb job representing most of, all of Washington County, Bristol, and part of Smith County. I sat down with Joe, and I said, Joe, I would never run against you. He's 79 years old, and I said, I understand that that maybe you only have a few years that you've spoken to people and told them you're not in this thing for much longer. And I would like for people to know that someone else is interested in becoming a delegate here in Southwest Virginia, in the 4th District at that time in particular. And that, Joe, I wouldn't run against you, but I would like to put my name on the ballot beside yours so that people knew that there was another candidate who was interested should you ever decide to retire. I took that desire to our Republican Party chairman and let him know that I was desirous of running for the House of Delegates. And I was placed on a candidate search committee for a candidate for House of Delegates. And shortly thereafter, a month, maybe two, I was notified that we have decided we don't want to run a candidate for the House of Delegates this year, at least not against Joe Johnson. I knew that redistricting was coming, but I did not know the extent of redistricting. And so I just assumed that there was going to be no House of Delegates candidate for the Republican Party this year in 2011, and so I resigned to that fact. There was no explanation given, but I figured they had their reasons, and so I went along with it. Well, it was shortly after that the tornado came through Glade Spring. We own a Bible bookstore there in Glade, our father's house, and a huge maple tree fell on the house, ripping the front porch off and the roof. It did extensive damage, and it basically shut us down. It shut all of Glade down for a week or so. And we were closed through to front door business for several months. We did have backdoor business. But I was busy working on that and dealing with the tornado damage. And a friend called me shortly thereafter and said, Mike, weren't you interested in running for House of Delegates? I said, well, yes, I was, but I was told that there would be no House of Delegate candidate this year. And he said, well, that's not necessarily true. There is a House of Delegates candidate, and he has announced already, and even if you desired to run for House of Delegates, at this point it's too late. And I said, what are you talking about? This was in July. And he said, well, there's this new 5th District that was Mr. Carrico's that used to only come down into the upper part of Smith County. Well, it's been stretched all the way down through Washington County and all the way down to Bristol. And you happen to be in that 5th District, even though you live 1 mile away from Joe Johnson, you're in a completely different House of Delegates district than Joe Johnson. And this came to me as a shock. I didn't understand how this could be. There was no convention. There was no mass meeting. There was no announcement made other than the fact that, we have now our candidate for the House of Delegates. Obviously this aroused some curiosity on my part, and so I gave Mr. Carrico a call and said, Bill, what's going on? And he explained to me, he had opted to go with a primary, and that when William Wampler resigned, that he then decided he would run for Senate, and then that vacated the House of Delegates seat, and he was worried about filling that seat, and that Mr. O'Quinn had expressed an interest earlier, and that he contacted him, and that they were had settled in on him as the Republican Party candidate for the House of Delegates in the new 5th District. I called then Mr. O'Quinn and asked him what was going on, and he also explained that he was running for this House seat, that he wanted my support if possible, and I called Brandon Boyles, the 5th District Chairman, to find out how this was done. And I still had some questions after having spoken with those 3 gentlemen. I took it to our executive committee meeting. I called some of the members, and they were scratching their heads and said, I don't know exactly how this went down or how it happened. We had a committee meeting that evening. I went to the committee meeting and asked everyone there at the committee meeting in an open question. No one seemed to understand exactly what had happened. The chairman said he was caught by surprise with the announcements, and the mass meeting for Washington County was coming up that next weekend, and so or that Saturday. So I asked to be placed on the agenda to speak to my party concerning what had actually happened, what had transpired. And as I understood it, the only way that if I had a desire to run for the House of Delegates, the only way for me to be able to run, to put my name on the ballot, was to run as an independent. Everyone agreed that, yes, it would be good for you to speak. They put me on the agenda. Saturday came around. I attended the mass meeting early in the morning. The chairman took me aside and said, I'm sorry, but I have received a lot of phone calls about you speaking today, and one in particular came from the 9th District Chairman, I believe, or the Republican Party of Virginia, and they said that we cannot allow you to speak today, and that if we do, that they will seek to disqualify you as a candidate. That didn't sit too well with me, and I wasn't sure exactly why. I said, why can't I speak? I'm on the agenda. I'm a former congressional candidate for the Republican Party. I'm on the executive committee of Washington County's Republican Party. Why can't I speak? And I was told, well, we're not having your kind of speakers here today. And I thought about it a while, and I said, the only way that I'll accept this, speaking to the chairman, is if you will explain to the people here at the mass meeting why I'm on the agenda to speak today, and why I'm not going to be speaking today. And he said, okay, I'll handle that. I'm not sure exactly what I'll say, but I will address that issue. And he got up and said, you'll notice today our speakers are going to be Mr. Carrico, Mr. O'Quinn, and Mr. Osborne, you'll notice, is on the agenda to speak, and we appreciate his running for Congress back in 2000. However, he has agreed not to speak today because it's so hot in here. He didn't want to put us through that. That was his explanation as to why I wasn't speaking that day. And so from that point on, I pretty much determined I am going to run for the House of Delegates as an independent. I had mentioned to Mr. O'Quinn that I was going to be speaking at the mass meeting. I had mentioned to him the possibility of running as an independent, but only if there was no Democratic challenger. And again, I reiterated that to a executive committee meeting a few weeks later and resigned from my position as the Wilson District Chairman and off of the executive committee. I thought that was appropriate. I filed my paperwork. Everything seemed to be going fine, except it was August the 18th, I believe, when I turned in all my paperwork, sent off certified mail to